Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Seeing Beyond and Through with Monty. Right before you is Diana Ross. Now, yesterday I did a video about Diana Ross and her relationship with Ryan O'Neal. And I detailed in that video as to how Ryan was very cruel to Diana Ross. This is all according to his daughter Tatum O'Neal's book, A Paper Life. Tatum goes on to explain how apparently her dad got tired of Diana. But instead of telling her, he ghosted her. As to when she would call, he would not pick up the phone, or he would have people lie and say that he was not there. And this went on for quite some time. And eventually, because of his abuse and neglect and ignoring her, they ended up breaking up. Now, Diana Ross also had dated her close friend Cher's former boyfriend, Gene Simmons. From what I've read, Cher was not upset about it. And here they go together, out and about. And she also dated Warren Beatty, which didn't work out. She went after Julio Iglesias. Now, they made a record together. And he was not her physical type. So it was not reciprocal. But she did want to date him because I remember her on a show where it was a musical show and someone asked her about him. Are they dating? And she kind of gushed and put her head down. She was laughing. But he didn't have feelings for her like she had for him. And then she made a dinner for former Olympic gymnast Bart Connor. She went after him. But I guess she was rather too old for him. Or you could say he felt like he was too young for her. Years later, he ended up marrying Nadia Comaneci. Now, all of this was after her marriage to Rob Silverstein, the father of Tracy and Courtney. So the video yesterday is going to lead up to something, and I'm going to show you the tie-in and how they connect to this particular video today. This is FKA Twigs. She's a British singer, dancer, rapper, basically all-around entertainer. FKA Twigs made news recently because she was in a very abusive relationship with Shia LaBeouf. Now, I want to bring up something about this. I'm going to refer to her as being black and biracial, but I'm going to show you something right here as to why I'm going to call her black, though. Go through the second part where it says, I feel like if I was going through it now, I would be able to talk about it and do some good with it, she continued. But I don't know whether it was because of my age or because of the social climate of being black and from, Cheltenham? So basically, she identifies as black, even though she's biracial, which is why I'm going to call her black. Because normally speaking, if biracial say they're not black or identifies biracial, I would call them biracial. So I choose to kind of, in some instances, identify a person as to how they choose to be self-identified, except if they are 18, 20, 25% black, I'm not going to call them black. But in her case, one black parent, the other being of another race, okay, I can go with that being black. But that's not the point of this particular video. Let's move on. Okay, she was in an abusive relationship with Shia LaBeouf. And she goes on to say she filed a lawsuit against him for sexual battery, sexual assault, and infliction of emotional distress. This is Shia right here. Many of you know him from the Transformer videos. She goes on to say at the bottom right here, she talks about the lawsuit. He responded, but at the bottom is what I want you to go to. It says, the lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court says that Mr. LaBeouf, knowingly gave Mrs. Barnett, that's her real name, last name, Barnett, a sexually transmitted disease. It accuses him of relentless abuse, including sexual battery, assault, and infliction of emotional distress. The sexually transmitted disease is a disease, or they call it the gift that keeps on giving, the herp. Anyway, here they are in happier times right there. This is FK Twigs with Shia. Before Shia, she was engaged to Robert Pattinson of the Twilight movies, and they were engaged for a 3-year period before he broke it off. And she goes right here, FKA Twig says she endured horrific racist abuse from fans of ex-fiancé Robert Pattinson. This is when she goes on to talk about what I just read to you. Let's go to the word says it was really, really deeply horrific, and I think it was at a time where I felt like I couldn't really talk about it. The 33-year-old performer, born Tahalia DeBrett Barnett, said during an interview for the BBC Radio 4, grounded with Louise Therex, I felt as though I was going through it now, I would be able to talk about it and do some good with it, she continued. But I don't know whether it was because of my age or because of the social climate or being black and from Cheltenham and from a low income family and having to genuinely work twice as hard at everything to get a seat at the table. So Robert Pattinson's fans made her realize that she wasn't white. They made her realize that she was black. And I'm sure that the N-word was hurled left and right. It's a shame that she had to put up with that type of abuse, but sometimes you bring it upon yourself. Let's move on. Here she is before Robert Pattinson and Shia LaBeouf with another gentleman. Here she is with another one. Do you see the common denominator? We're going to tie this in together. Here she is with another one. See the similarities with that. This is Mrs. Dorothy Dandridge. We're going to move on. Now, this is going back farther. I want to show you something. This beautiful lady right here could have had almost any man she wanted. But what she chose to do and what she chose to admit is that after her marriage failed to Harold Nicholas, he did cheat on her. She threw herself to white men, but the white men were no better. This is Otto Preminger, the director of Carmen Jones. She was in a 3-year relationship with him. It was very mentally abusive. She thought he was going to leave his wife, but he had no intentions of leaving his wife for her. The longer the relationship went, the more abusive it got. Now, I want you to hear out of her own mouth as to what she talked about in her relationship with white men. She goes, well, this is the affair with Peter Lawford. I believe he was kin to the Kennedy clan. The affair soon fizzled, and Dandridge came to feel conned by Lawford and his charming ways. Dandridge had let herself fall hard, knowing Lawford was ambitious and would never marry a black woman. Still, she admits in her book, if I were honest with myself, I would have to admit that I wanted nothing better than to hear him say, marry me. So basically with Peter Lawford, she wanted him to marry her, but he had no intentions of marrying a black woman. Let's move on right here. Go to the second part where it says that there was a disastrous marriage to a Philly nightclub owner, Jack Dennison, which was filled with drinking and intense fights. Here's what Dorothy had to say. Some people kill themselves with drink, others with overdoses, some with a gun. A few hurl themselves in front of trains or autos. I hurled myself in front of another white man, she dryly recalls. So Dorothy had a habit of throwing herself into relationships with white men who abused her. we're going to make a connection. This is Eartha Kitt. Eartha Kitt right here had a very difficult upbringing. Eartha Kitt was married to and pretty much dated white men in Hollywood. She looks great there, by the way. Here she is with her baby, Kit, I believe. Here was Mrs. Kitt. Now, I want to show you something that she wrote here. I had both of them that afternoon, and I came to the conclusion that white boys were so delicious. That time back in my dance studio ranks as one of the most celestial experiences of my life. Those two beauties transported me to heaven. I never knew that lovemaking could be so beautiful. This is when she made a claim that white boys are so delicious. And she was talking about James Dean and Paul Newman. So back in her dance studio here, they had a threesome. Yes, they did. And I want you to hear something that Eartha Kitt stated. And when you see this video, notice the hurt, the pain, the loneliness, the sometimes anger that comes out, the despair. This was after all of these affairs with these white men, but yet she's alone. And we're going to tie this together. But I do want you to pay attention to this video.
Can anyone live with Eartha Kitt?
That's not for me to decide. Not for someone who decides to live with me to decide. Not for me.
But are you willing to compromise within a relationship?
Compromise? What is compromising? Compromising for what? Compromising for what reason? To compromise? For what? To compromise. What is compromise?
If a man came into your life, wouldn't you want to compromise?
Stupid. A man comes into my life and I have to compromise? You must think about that one again. A man comes into my life and you have to compromise for what? For what? For what? A relationship is a relationship that has to be earned, not to compromise for. And I love relationships. I think they're fantastic. They're wonderful. I think they're great. I think there's nothing in the world more beautiful than falling in love. But falling in love for the right reason. Falling in love for the right purpose. Falling in love. Falling in love. When you fall in love, what is there to compromise about?
Isn't love a union between two people? Or does Eartha fall in love with herself?
I think if you were to think about it in terms of analyzing, yes, I fall in love with myself and I want someone to share it with me. I want someone to share me with me.
Has that happened?
Bye, Waylon! Bye! Many times. In many ways.
We're putting together crew.
I'm in.
This It's gonna be lit!
Okay, so you've seen that pitiful video of a Eartha Kitt in her latter years, very much alone. And right here, TIL, that singer Eartha Kitt once had a threesome with Paul Newman and James Dean and described their experience by saying that white boys are so delicious. Let me just say one thing with that. Saying something like that, in my opinion, you being a black female, you putting that out there in the universe is bad karma. What you're saying is somehow that men of your own race are not delicious, are not as good in some type of a way. You're describing a group of white men who, for the most part, do not really want you. The vast majority of white men prefer white women. And this day and age, after a white woman is going to be an Asian woman. So here's the thing about this video. This video is not to put down black women. It's not to put down anyone. What I'm showing a pattern is this here. Have you noticed that when black women tend to throw themselves at white men, when they tend to run after white men and make themselves available to these white men, they tend to attract the wrong type of white man. You notice that same theme throughout this whole video with these relationships. They tend to get men who are abusive, who are neglectful, who are not really into them. It's almost like they're a passing fancy. And I really believe that these types of men pick up on desperation, insecurity, neediness, and are wanting above all things to have a white man. And I believe that these women settle for these types of relationships, first and foremost, as opposed to, let's say, content over character. The content is that he's white. That's just the main thing. And whatever type of abuse that comes with these relationships, they take it. I mean, they kind of tolerate it. Because first and foremost, they want a white man. Maybe they sense and realize that the vast majority of white men, even though they are famous, are still not really going to be into them. So they take the crumbs. They take this abusive behavior. We're talking about women who are women of means, who have money, who can get out, who are not really dependent on these men. But still, in the case of Diana Ross, FKA Twigs, Dorothy Dandridge, Eartha Kitt, they could have left. They're not dependent upon these men for sustaining their life, for keeping a roof over their head, for any type of financial means. So psychologically, it is the very fact that these are white men who they in some way are hoping will change. And these men, for the most part, are not going to change. As I've told you once before, FKA Twigs being a biracial woman who identifies as black, it doesn't matter. To them, even if you're biracial, they will see you as being black. For the most part, they are not looking for a long-term relationship with a black woman. They are looking for an experience. Learn the difference. An experience would be that they may shack up with you for a while. They may spend a limited time with you for a while. You may come out there with a baby. You certainly might come out there with a disease or something like that. But as far as them marrying you, or sharing their life with you, or passing on generational wealth to you, they don't really want that. That's not really what they want. They just are responding out of curiosity. And these women are wanting something deeper. And what ends up happening is that in the Eartha Kitt video, they end up being alone. Diana Ross is alone right now. Is she with a man? No. FKA Twigs, I don't know if she learned her lesson. She's still young yet, but she'll probably go off with another white man. It'll probably take her years to really learn a lesson as to Maybe you should broaden your dating range. Maybe you should date others as opposed to just constantly running after and being under white men. Maybe you would improve your chances if you were to be more open to biracial men, maybe black men, Asian men, different types of men, because apparently with white men it's just not working out for you. And I just think that the common denominator there is that, as I mentioned before and before, they are pitting white above everything else. And that is the problem with that. Maybe if you date, I would say this much to black women. If you're going to go on a dating site with white men, don't hit them up. Don't tap them up. Don't inbox them. Let them come after you. Because what I have noticed is that when white men come after black women, she tends to get a certain type, a different type, as opposed to her going out there chasing after them. When she chases after white men, she tends to get a very abusive type, the type that these women had. So this is not to get up there and say that I am like against them dating out, or they should only date biracial or black men. No, if you're going to date a white man, let him chase you. Let him come after you. Don't go chasing after him. I think your experience will be a lot different and better. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is another edition of Seeing Beyond and Through with Monty, and I will see you beyond and through.